Hello, welcome to Shad Life. Today I'm going to talk about handlebar position. I've talked a lot about reach, and I'll show you a diagram right here of what reach is, which is kind of the measure from center of bottom bracket to the top right here of your frame, and then the measurement is here. So here's the diagram of what that measurement is, and this is an important measurement to figure out what frame size you want. Is you want to figure out the length of the frame. It's super nice that in modern mountain bike terms, we're no longer measuring frames by how long the seat tube is. We're measuring them appropriately by how long the frame is. Most frames are super squished down, and then you add a dropper post and stuff, so we don't have to worry so much about that anymore. But what we do want to worry about is the length. And so reach is important because that's the size of your bike when you're standing. And in mountain biking, we stand a lot. When you're doing anything technical, anything aggressive, you want to be out of the saddle and you want to be standing. So the reach measurement is very important. But there's other things that affect how your bike rides. And the one I'm going to talk about today is handlebar position. Before I do want to talk about stem length because that plays a role. So gone are the days of us running stems like this on our mountain bikes. Like, remember back in the days, if you were into mountain biking, we used to have these long stems, right? Look at how far forward your handlebars would be. And what that does is that puts your weight, shifts your weight up over the front wheel where you don't want it. Now that frames are getting longer, we can run shorter stems and our weight is behind the front wheel where we do want it. The same thing can happen depending on how your bars are rotated. So let's talk about that. Okay, so I angled the bars forward of perpendicular. So perpendicular would be straight up and down, and then these are a little bit forward. And I have actually seen people run their bars like this. It's also how trials riders like to run their bars. The reason trials riders do this is because they're up on their back wheel all the time, so their bike's upright, and so they angle their bars to kind of match that position of their bike. To do it when you're going to be mostly level like this is kind of silly, but so here they're forward, and what happens as soon as I stand up is my weight is further forward over the front wheel. It's not where I want it to be. It's not back here where I would like it to be. It's way up here. So it causes a similar effect as having a longer stem on it. And it's even worse in my case because I'm running 50 millimeter rise bars. If you have, lower rise bars, like 20 or 25 millimeter rise, it's still going to cause the same effect. It's just going to be to a less degree, right? So what I'm going to do is, I'm doing this in the manual machine for a reason, is I want to show you how hard it is to pull up the front wheel when the bars are like this. So I can't shift my weight as far back. So in order to pull up the front wheel, it's a lot harder. I have to really throw my weight back and pull, and I'm still not able. Let's see here. There we go. Now I got it up there, right? So it is pretty hard to pull. It's a lot of arm work, a lot of effort to get the front of the bike up. So for people with smaller build, smaller stature, this is even less ideal because now you're going to have to just work that much harder and you might not have the strength. And if you're thinking about, like, let's just say going off a jump and you kind of get bucked forward, well, this will just exacerbate that effect, right? So I highly don't recommend doing this. The riders you might see do this are experienced in one form or another, or maybe they like to do trials and hop around more. I don't know, but or they just don't know what they're doing. Maybe they got used to it and they just think that's the way it needs to be, right? So let's go ahead and move the bars straight up and down, but I want to show you something before I do that. Handlebars have a an upsweep to them. So if you look at this bar, and I'm going to eyeball it, right? There's a certain degree of upsweep on each side. As I rotate the bar forward, that upsweep increases, so your hands turn inward like this. And then as I rotate it straight up and down, it still has some upsweep. And then as I rotate it back and I get the angle just right, then they become flat. And if you go too far back, notice how they start to come down. You don't want that, right? Right? So let me go ahead and do them straight up and down, and then I'll talk about this back position in a minute. Okay, so I moved them back so they're perpendicular with the ground. So this is the position I usually see handlebars at. Like if a bike shop assembles a bike or whatever, this is usually their default position. A lot of riders I see, and I get on their bike and it feels a little awkward to me. So this is more common. I don't see the forward very often. I do see this a lot, but it still causes that same effect. It still feels a little awkward to me. And so when I get up here, my weight is still further forward than I would like it to be, right? It's a little harder to get my weight back. We'll go ahead and do that manual, right? Definitely easier, that's for sure, than it was when the bars were forward. Oh yeah, yep. But it's still a lot of pull. I'm having to shift, and of course I'm going from having to pull really hard to now having to back off a little bit because I got used to pulling really hard. But yeah, this is still a lot of work. It's a lot of effort to get the front end up. And it feels awkward. And then I talked about that upsweep. My hands are a little up like this. Depending on how much upsweep your bars have, it's going to rotate your wrist inward like that a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate them back and line them up with the angle of your fork and talk about that. I can just feel it already. This is perfect, right? So I angled them with the angle of the fork, right? So I basically just draw a pretend line from the fork angle straight up and then try to turn my bars to match that. And then what I also do is as I'm rotating them back, I come back here and look and make sure that the sweep is flat. I don't want them up and I don't want them down. I want them perfectly flat. And most handlebars have just the right amount of upsweep like this, that when you tip them back, they'll be nice and flat and perfect. And that's the feel I'm going for. Call it the BMXer in me, because I bring my BMX bars back too, and most BMX riders do. I also do it on my mountain bikes. Again, I'm running 50 millimeter rise bars, so the effects are going to be more between where my bars are forward, middle, and back than, say, like a 20 or 25 millimeter rise bar, even a 30, right? So I angled them back. They feel comfortable. Seated here, I feel okay, plenty of leg room, cockpit's just fine. I'm 5'7", right? The reach on this bike is 420 millimeters, so this feels spot on for me. I could ride for a long time like this. I do have a pretty upright, feel like my balance in this thing. I'm pretty upright here, right? Not lean forward. Some people like that. That's gonna, I could take some spacers out here if I wanted more of that lean forward feeling, whatever. But yeah, this feels really good. Again, I obviously like my front end taller because I have all the spacers in. I have 50 millimeter rise bars. That's a lot of personal preference. But this bar angle thing, I highly recommend you try it. Like, rotate them back, and of course you're gonna have to change. I didn't change any of my controls, my brakes, my shifter, my dropper lever when I did this little exercise, but they're where I like to have them. So obviously if you rotate your bars, you're going to want to readjust your controls. But when you first do this, it'll probably feel weird to you because you're going to be used to whatever setting you have. But I implore you to try this. Rotate them, line them up with the fork, have the sweep be or the up sweep be flat, right? And ride a few times and get used to it and see how it feels. Now, one of the reasons why I really like this is now I can get my weight easily back here where I want it. And if I'm going to do a manual, oh, so much less effort. Like, I was able to pull that front end up with way less. I'm actually kind of shocked at how just rotating the bars, those little bits, makes a difference in my ability to control the front end and pull up the front end. So yeah, way easier, like unreal. Of course, I don't have that little device in my around my chain ring, so my cranks are free, which is what you want to do when you're practicing manuals. That's still on my Haro Saguaro hanging over there. But I'll probably throw it on this bike and practice on this bike a bit too. So now I'm going way off topic. Handlebars. So I really recommend you try this. I know a lot of people, they get used to how they have their stuff set up. But trust me, if you try this and allow yourself some time to adjust to it and get used to it, you'll probably end up liking it. That's just basically my recommendation. I actually feel like this should be kind of the standard handlebar setup, angled or tipped back to match the angle of the fork. I also think that is why handlebar companies put upsweep on the bars, because then it allows you to do that. As I showed you before, it allows you to rotate the bars back a little bit until you get a flat upsweep. And then that feels good and is just right. And again, if you didn't have upsweep here, right, when you rotated them back, then they would go down, and we certainly don't want that. That would feel really awkward to have the handlebars going down like this. You want them nice and flat, right? So you could always use that as your gauge too, is instead of lining up with the fork, just keep rotating your bars back and eyeballing them. You could even use like, a level or a ruler or something that's long enough and just get it nice and flat and then clamp them down there, and then readjust your controls and stuff. So yeah, there's forward, right? And then there's straight up and down, and then there's a little bit back, and this is ideal. So, and everybody's got personal preferences, but I feel like a lot of people's personal preferences are because they're just used to something and they haven't even tried this other thing. So I recommend you try rotating them back and get used to it. And I can almost guarantee you, I can't guarantee you, but I can almost guarantee you you'll be more comfortable and end up liking the bars back. And bar rise will make a difference. Like these, I believe, are 35 millimeter rise, if I remember right. I don't see a number on here, but so they're going to have less of that effect, but they still move quite a bit. Like there's a good inch, half inch to an inch of movement forward and back when I rotate these. And of course, it's probably even more so with the 50 mil rise bars. So there you have it. Hope you liked this tip. I don't, out there on YouTube, I haven't seen anybody talk about this. I'm sure somebody has. I personally haven't seen it. It's certainly not mentioned much. But when it comes to bike setup and cockpit, this is one of those things you have control over and can make a difference. And if you do feel like your bike's a little too long for you, let's say you did get one that's got a longer reach, you could get higher rise handlebars like I have and rotate them back, and that would bring, go with a shorter stem, taller bars, rotate them back, and you could actually bring that reach back quite a bit to make your bike feel more comfortable if you feel like it's just a little too long for you. So there you have it. Hope you like these kind of tips that I give you. I appreciate your support for my channel. Please like and subscribe. Peace. Oh, one more thing before you go. It is the 10th. There's 5 days left to enter to win the Esker frame. So go back a few videos. It's my 5K subscriber video that I was all excited about getting to 5K. I'm doing a frame giveaway. Go back to that video, watch it, and make sure you enter the contest if you're interested in that frame. Sweet. Glad I remembered to mention it at the very end here, even after I did my ending.